problems and experiences. One has at times vivid flashes of a consciousness whose center is outside the normal self and which seems to be all-inclusive. Without concerning ourselves with philosophical concepts, how would Bhagavan advise me to work towards getting, retaining, and extending those rare flashes? Does the abhyasa, spiritual practice necessary for such experiences, involve retirement? You say, outside. For whom is the inside or outside? These can exist only so long as there are the subject and object. For whom are these two again? One, on investigation you will find that they resolve into the subject only. See who is the subject, and this inquiry will lead you to pure consciousness beyond the subject. You say, normal self. The normal self is the mind with limitations. But pure consciousness is beyond limitations and is reached by investigation into the I. You say, getting. The self is always there. You have only to remove the veil obstructing the revelation of the self. You say, retaining. Once you realize the self, it becomes your direct and immediate experience. It is never lost. You say, extending. There is no extending of the self, for it is as it always is, without contraction or expansion. You say, retirement. Abiding in the self is solitude because there is nothing alien to the self. Retirement must be from one place or state to another. There is neither the one nor the other apart from the self. All being the self, retirement is impossible and inconceivable. You say abhyasa. Abhyasa is only the prevention of disturbance to the inherent peace. You are always in your natural state, whether you make abhyasa or not. To remain as you are, without question or doubt, is your natural state. There are times when persons and things take on a vague, almost transparent form as in a dream. One ceases to observe them from outside, but one is passively conscious of their existence while not actively conscious of any kind of selfhood. There is a deep quietness in the mind. Is the mind at such times ready to dive into the self? Or is this condition unhealthy, the result of self-hypnotism? Should it be encouraged as a means of getting temporary peace? There is consciousness along with quietness in the mind. This is exactly the state to be aimed at. The fact that the question has been framed on this point without realizing that it is the self shows that the state is not steady, but casual. The word diving is only appropriate if one has to turn the mind within in order to avoid being distracted by the outgoing tendencies of the mind. At such times one has to dive below the surface of these external phenomena. But when deep quietness prevails, without obstructing the consciousness, where is the need to dive? When I meditate, I feel a certain bliss at times. On such occasions, should I ask myself, who is it that experiences this bliss? If it is the real bliss of the self that is experienced, that is, if the mind has really merged in the self, such a doubt will not arise at all. The question itself shows real bliss was not reached. All doubts will cease only when the doubter and his source have been found. There is no use removing doubts one by one. If we clear one doubt, another doubt will arise, and there will be no end of doubts. But if, by seeking the source of the doubter is found to be really non-existent, then all doubts will cease. Sometimes I hear internal sounds. What should I do when such things happen? Whatever may happen, keep up the inquiry into the self asking who hears these sounds till the reality is reached. Sometimes, while in meditation, I feel blissful and tears come to my eyes. At other times, I do not have them. Why is that? Bliss is a thing which is always there, and is not something which comes and goes. That which comes and goes is a creation of the mind, and you should not worry about it. The bliss causes a physical thrill in the body, but when it disappears, I feel dejected and desire to have the experience over again. Why? You admit that you were there both when the blissful feeling was experienced and when it was not. Though if you realize that you properly, those experiences will be of no account. For realizing that bliss, there must be something to catch hold of, mustn't there? There must be a duality if you are to catch hold of something else. But what is only the one self, not a duality. Hence, who is to catch hold of whom? And what is the thing to be caught? When I reach the thoughtless stage in my sadhana, I enjoy a certain pleasure, but sometimes I also experience a vague fear which I cannot properly describe. You may experience anything, but you should never rest content with that. Whether you feel pleasure or fear, ask yourself who feels the pleasure or the fear, and so carry on the sadhana until pleasure and fear are both transcended, till all duality ceases, until the reality alone remains. There is nothing wrong in such happenings or being experienced, but you must never stop at that. For instance, you must never rest content with the pleasure of laya, temporary abeyance of the mind, experienced when thought is quelled. You must press on until all duality ceases. How does one get rid of fear? What is fear? It is only a thought. If there is anything besides the self, there is reason to fear. Who sees things separate from the self? First, the ego arises and sees objects as external. If the ego does not rise, the self alone exists, and there is nothing external. For anything external to oneself implies the existence of the seer within. Seeking it there will eliminate doubt and fear. Not only fear, all other thoughts centered round the ego will disappear along with it. How can the terrible fear of death be overcome? When does that fear seize you? Does it come when you do not see your body, say in dreamless sleep? It haunts you only when you are fully awake and perceive the world, including your body. If you do not see these, and remain in your pure self as in dreamless sleep, no fear can touch you. If you trace this fear to the object, the loss of which gives rise to it, you will find that the object is not the body, but the mind which functions in it. Many a man would be only too glad to be rid of his diseased body and all the problems and inconvenience it creates for him if continued awareness were vouchsafed to him. It is the awareness, the consciousness, and not the body he fears to lose. Men love existence because it is eternal awareness, which is their own self. Why not then hold on to the pure awareness right now while in the body and be free from all fear? When I try to be without all thoughts, I pass into sleep. What should I do about it? Once you go to sleep, you can do nothing in that state. But while you are awake, try to keep away all thoughts. Why think about sleep? Even that is a thought, is it not? If you are able to be without any thought while you are awake, that is enough. When you pass into sleep, the state which you were in before falling asleep will continue when you wake up. You will continue from where you left off when you fell into slumber. So long as there are thoughts of activity, there will also be sleep. Thought and sleep are counterparts of one and the same thing. We should not sleep too much or go without it altogether, but sleep only moderately. To prevent too much sleep, we must try and have no thoughts or chalana, movement of the mind. We must eat only sattvic food, and that only in moderate measure, and not indulge in too much physical activity. The more we control sleep, the more we control thought, activity, and food, the more we shall be able to control sleep. But moderation ought to be the rule as explained in the Gita for the seeker on the path. Sleep is the first obstacle, as explained in the books for all sadhaks. The second obstacle is said to be vikshepa, or the sense objects of the world which divert one's attention. The third is said to be kashaya, or thoughts in the mind about previous experiences with sense objects. The fourth, ananda bliss, is also called an obstacle, because in that state a feeling of separation from the source of ananda, enabling the enjoyer to say, "I am enjoying ananda," is present. Even this has to be surmounted. The final stage of samadhi has to be reached in which one becomes ananda, or one with reality. In this state, the duality of enjoyer and enjoyment ceases in the ocean of Satchitananda, or the self. So one should not try to perpetuate blissful or ecstatic states. The final obstacle in meditation is ecstasy. You feel great bliss and happiness and want to stay in that ecstasy. Do not yield to it, but pass on to the next stage, which is great calm. The calm is higher than ecstasy, and it merges into samadhi. Successful samadhi causes a waking sleep state to supervene. In that state, you know that you are always consciousness, for consciousness is your nature. Actually, one is always in samadhi, but one does not know it. To know it, all one has to do is to remove the obstacles. Through poetry, music, japa, bhajans, devotional songs, the sight of beautiful landscapes, reading the lines of spiritual verses, etc., one experiences sometimes a true sense of the all-pervading unity. Is that feeling of deep blissful quiet, in which the personal self has no place, the same as the entering into the heart of which Bhagavan speaks? Will undertaking these activities lead to a deeper samadhi, and so ultimately to a full vision of the real? There is happiness when agreeable things are presented to the mind. It is the happiness inherent in the self, and there is no other happiness, and it is not alien and afar. You are diving into the self on those occasions which you consider pleasurable, and that diving results in self-existent bliss. But the association of ideas is responsible for foisting that bliss on other things or occurrences, while in fact that bliss is within you. On these occasions, you are plunging into the self, though unconsciously. If you do so consciously with the conviction that comes of the experience that you are identical with the happiness, which is truly the self, the one reality, you call it realization. I want you to dive consciously into the self. That is the heart. I've been making sadhana for nearly 20 years, and I can see no progress. What should I do? From about 5 o'clock every morning, I concentrate on the thought that the self alone is real and all else unreal. Although I have been doing this for about 20 years, I cannot concentrate for more than 2 or 3 minutes without my thoughts wandering. There is no other way to succeed than to draw the mind back every time it turns outwards and fix it in the self. There is no need for meditation or mantra or japa or anything of the sort, because these are a real nature. All that is needed is to give up thinking of objects other than the self. Meditation is not so much thinking of the self as giving up thinking of the not-self. When you give up thinking of outward objects and prevent your mind from going outwards by turning it inwards and fixing it in the self alone remains. What should I do to overcome the pull of these thoughts and desires? How should I regulate my life so as to attain control over my thoughts? The more you get fixed in the self, the more other thoughts will drop off of themselves. The mind is nothing but a bundle of thoughts, and the I thought is the root of all of them. When you see who this I is and find out where it comes from, all thoughts get merged in the self. Regulation of life, such as getting up at a fixed hour, bathing, doing mantra japa, observing ritual, all this is for people who do not feel drawn to self-inquiry or are not capable of it. But for those who can practice this method, all rules and disciplines are unnecessary. Why cannot the mind be turned inward in spite of repeated attempts? It is done by practice and dispassion, and it succeeds only gradually. The mind, having been so long a cow, accustomed to gaze stealthily on others' estates, is not easily confined to her own stall. However much her keeper tempts her with luscious grass and fine fodder, she refuses the first time. Then she takes a bit. But her innate tendency to stray away asserts itself, and she slips away. On being repeatedly tempted by the owner, she accustoms herself to the stall until finally, even if let loose, she does not stray away. Similarly with the mind. If once it finds its inner happiness, it will not wander outward. Are there not modulations in contemplation according to circumstances? Yes, there are. At times there is illumination, and then contemplation is easy. At other times contemplation is impossible, even with repeated attempts. This is due to the working of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Is it influenced by one's activities and circumstances? Those cannot influence it. It is the sense of doership, kartriva buddhi, that forms the impediment. My mind remains clear for 2 or 3 days and turns dull for the next 2 or 3 days, and so it alternates. What is it due to? It is quite natural. It is the play of purity, sattva, activity, rajas, and inertia, tamas, alternating. Do not regret the tamas, but when sattva comes into play, hold on to it and make the best of it. A man sometimes finds that the physical body does not permit steady meditation. Should he practice yoga for training the body for the purpose? It is according to one's samskaras, predispositions. One man will practice hatha yoga for curing his bodily ills. Another man will trust to God to cure them. A third man will use his willpower for it, and a fourth man may be totally indifferent to them. But all of them will persist in meditation. The quest for the self is the essential factor, and all the rest are mere accessories. My attempts at concentration are frustrated by sudden palpitations of the heart and accompanying hard, short, and quick breaths. Then my thoughts also rush out and the mind becomes uncontrollable. Under healthy conditions, I am more successful, and my breath comes to a standstill with deep concentration. I had long been anxious to get the benefit of Sri Bhagavan's proximity for the successful culmination of my meditation, and so came here after considerable effort. I fell ill here. I could not meditate, and so I felt depressed. I made a determined effort to concentrate my mind, even though I was troubled by short and quick breaths. Though partly successful, it does not satisfy me. The time for my leaving the place is drawing near. I feel more and more depressed as I contemplate leaving the place. Here I find people obtaining peace by meditation in the halls, whereas I am not blessed with such peace. This itself has a depressing effect on me. This thought, I am not able to concentrate, is itself an obstacle. Why should the thought arise? Can one remain without thoughts rising all the 24 hours of the day? Should I remain without meditation? What is ours again? It is a concept. Each question of yours is prompted by a thought. Whenever a thought arises, do not be carried away by it. You become aware of the body when you forget the self. But can you forget the self? Being the self, how can you forget it? There must be two selves for one to get the other. It is absurd. So the self is not depressed, nor is it imperfect. It is ever happy. The contrary feeling is mere thought which has actually no stamina in it. Be rid of thoughts. Why should one attempt meditation? Being the self, one remains always realized. Only be free from thoughts. You think that your health does not permit your meditation. This depression must be traced to its origin. The origin is the wrong identification of the body with the self. The disease is not of the self, it is of the body. But the body does not come and tell you that it is possessed by disease. It is you who say so. Why? Because you have wrongly identified yourself with the body. The body itself is a thought. Be as you really are. There is no reason to be depressed. Suppose there is some disturbance during meditation, such as mosquito bites. Should one persist in meditation and try to bear the bites and ignore the interruption, or drive the mosquitoes away and then continue the meditation? You must do as you find most convenient. You will not attain mukti simply because you drive them away. The thing is to attain one-pointedness, and then to attain manonasa, destruction of the mind. Whether you do this by putting up with the mosquito bites or driving the mosquitoes away is left to you. If you are completely absorbed in your meditation, you will not know that the mosquitoes are biting you. Till you attain that stage, why should you not drive them away? People practicing meditation are said to get new diseases. At any rate, I feel some pain in the back and front of the chest. This is stated to be a test by God. Will Bhagavan explain this and say if it is true? There is no Bhagavan outside you, and no test is therefore instituted. What you believe to be a test or a new disease resulting from spiritual practices is really the strain that is now brought to play upon your nerves and the five senses. The mind which was hitherto operating through the nadis, nerves, to sense external objects, maintaining a link between self and the organs of perception, is now required to withdraw from the link. And this action of withdrawal naturally causes a strain or a snap attendant with pain. Some people call this a disease, some call it a test of God. All these pains will go if you continue your meditation, bestowing your thought solely on understanding yourself or on self-realization. There is no greater remedy than this: continuous yoga or union with God or Atman. Pain is inevitable as a result of discarding the vasanas, mental tendencies which you have had for so long. What is the best way of dealing with desires and vasanas with a view to getting rid of them? satisfying them or suppressing them. If a desire can be got rid of by satisfying it, there will be no harm in satisfying such a desire. But desires generally are not eradicated by satisfaction. Trying to root them out that way is like trying to quench a fire by pouring inflammable spirits on it. At the same time, the proper remedy is not forcible suppression, since such repression is bound to react sooner or later into a forceful surging up of desires with undesirable consequences. The proper way to get rid of a desire is to find out who gets the desire. What is its source? When this is found, the desire is rooted out and it will never again emerge or grow. Small desires, such as the desire to eat, drink, sleep, and attend to calls of nature, though these may also be classed among desires, you can safely satisfy them. They will not implant vasanas in your mind, necessitating further birth. Those activities are just necessary to carry on life and are not likely to develop only behind vasanas or tendencies. As a general rule, therefore, there is no harm in satisfying a desire, where the satisfaction will not lead to further desires by creating vasanas in the mind. In the practice of meditation, are there any signs in the realm of subjective experience that will indicate the aspirant's progress towards self-realization? The degree of freedom from unwanted thoughts and the degree of concentration on a single thought are the measures to gauge the progress.